Our readings today are from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 5 and chapter 6. Moses called out to all Israel, saying to them, "Listen, Israel, listen to the regulations and the case laws that made a covenant with us at Mount Horeb. Learn them and carefully do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Mount Horeb. The Lord didn't make a covenant with our ancestors, but with us, all of us who are here and alive right now. The Lord spoke with you face to face on the mountain from the very fire itself. At that time I was standing between the Lord and you, declaring to you the Lord's word, because you were terrified of the fire and didn't go up to the mountain. The Lord said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You must have no other gods before me. Do not make an idol for yourself, no form whatsoever, of anything in the sky above or on the earth below or in the waters under the earth. Do not bow down to them or worship them, because I, the Lord your God, am a passionate God. I will punish children for their parents' sins, even to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. But I am a loyal and gracious to the 1000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. Do not use the Lord your God's name as if it were of no significance. The Lord won't forgive anyone who uses his name that way. Keep the Sabbath day and treat it as holy, exactly as the Lord your God commanded. 6 days you may work and do all your tasks, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Don't do any work on it. Not you, your sons or daughters, your male or female servants, your oxen or donkeys or any of your animals, or the immigrant who is living among you, so that your male and female servants can rest just like you. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out of there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. That's why the Lord your God commands you to keep the Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother, exactly as the Lord your God requires, so that your life will be long, and so that things will go well for you on the fertile land that the Lord your God is giving you. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not testify falsely against your neighbor. Do not desire and try to take your neighbor's wife. Do not crave your neighbor's house, field, male or female servant, ox, donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. Israel, listen. Our God is the Lord, only the Lord. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your strength. These words that I am commanding you today must always be on your minds. Recite them to your children. Talk about them when you are sitting around your house and when you are out and about, when you are lying down and when you are getting up. Tie them on your hand as a sign. They should be on your forehead as a symbol. Write them on your house's door frames and on your city's gates.
Friends, will you join me in prayer? Gracious, holy, and loving God, may our words and our thoughts and our reflections be a blessing to you and all that you love. Amen. Last week we met Moses, and Moses met God, and now we are 40 years later. and the Hebrew people who were enslaved have left Egypt. We had met the Pharaoh, seen some plagues, crossed some waters. And it didn't end up perfect, because nothing is perfect when you step into the unknown. And the Hebrew people who were liberated, I'm just not used to this, were often desperate for the certainty that came from being in Egypt, even if it cost them their humanity. So, the generation that had left Egypt, that had gathered at Sinai, that had walked and camped, was no more, and a new generation stood before Moses. And Moses is coming to the end of his leadership and the end of his life, and he would not be crossing into the promised land. So much of Deuteronomy is Moses telling the people his final instructions. He's telling the people who gathered, who have grown up in the wilderness, a story. And he tells it not as if it is their ancestors' story that happened way back there 40 years ago, but as if it were their story when you were set free. Y'all. To you all, y'all. When God met you all at Sinai, when y'all were given the law. There was an understanding that what was said, what had been given, that when they were freed, was for all the Hebrew people of all time, because y'all were there, even if you weren't even born yet. Now, there are many Christians, or non-Christians, that think Christianity, there are many who think Christianity is just a bunch of rules. And some of that probably stems from these 10 commandments we have here in Deuteronomy. They also appear in Exodus. And these 10 words, as they're sometimes called, can be divided into two categories. Choosing who you are going to follow, and then recognizing your deep connection to each other and to all of creation. What are you going to bind your life to? And how do we keep trust while living in community? Because we're going to need each other as a community to do the first part well. These commandments, these words, were given because this is what it means to live free. Something is going to guide your life, direct your steps, our conversations, how we spend our money, our time, our energy, how we treat a stranger, the immigrant, an enemy, or creation. It might be Egypt and the empire with the economic system that exploits animals and people and the earth as if it has no connection to us at all. Working all things and people until there is no life left to give. Could be an accumulation economy that hoards wealth and resources and then dribbles it out to those in need. Could be a power that manipulates the system to keep some oppressed, some small, some dehumanized. Because that's what happened in Egypt, and sometimes that is what happens in our world. Makes people cogs in a machine. The things that might call to lead your and guide your life might be the call of individualism, that I got here on my own and I need no one. It might be the call that your worth is what you do, what you produce, what you own, how you look, that drives how the choices you make in life. And they will always tell you you're not enough. It might be any of a cacophony of voices that cry out to you, that tell you who you are supposed to be, how you are supposed to live, and how you should choose what you do, where you should put your attention, your focus, and your energy. And God was offering them freedom and saying, because you are free, here is how you need to live into that freedom. Follow the God who set you free and learn to honor and treat each person and animal with dignity. Moses was telling them and us that this is how you can live free from the ways of the world, free from the abuse and the oppression, free from the ideas and actions that dehumanize and exploit people and creatures and the world, and follow the God who liberates and live in trusting communities. And here's the thing, Moses makes it very, very clear that we are going to forget. The reading that began at chapter 6, and our reading today, it began with Israel, listen. It normally begins with, hear, O Israel. It's called the Shema. It's a prayer. It's a Jewish prayer called the Shema, which is the word for hear or listen in Hebrew. A devout Jewish person would recite the prayer, the whole thing, at least twice a day. In many ways, it summarizes the commandments and its why. When asked what the greatest commandment was, Jesus quotes the Shema, that our God is Lord, and we should love God with all your heart, your soul, and your strength. But it goes on to give instructions to repeat the words and the law so that it's in your mind and in your heart, to teach it to your children, to talk about it throughout the day, to set reminders so you don't forget. So you don't forget that our God, who set us free, has given us everything we need for freedom. Our God is Lord, and love God with all your heart and being and strength. And that we live into the commandments, recognizing our deep interconnectedness and being a trustworthy members of a community of faith. The words that become a guiding prayer, the most important thing, the framework through which our whole life is lived. So friends, what guides you? What is the primary source of influence for the decisions you make? Where is your time and your energy and your resources going? Now, I'm not saying it needs to be church, and this isn't a cry for money, just for honest discernment. What is your guiding narrative? Is it a myth of more, of accumulation, of wealth and growth and busyness? Does that narrative liberate you? Does it set you free? Does it bring wholeness and joy? What if your guiding narrative, and what if you follow God, this God of liberation and love? What if the central place of how you run your household, how you raise your children, how you move through the world, how you interact with your neighbors, known and unknown, how you care for creation, begins with that? What if we set reminders for when we would forget, on our being, in our homes, in art and music, in story and in community? What if we lived as if we had been set free? Hear the words of the Shema again, modernized. Shh, listen up, God wrestlers. Do you know God? God is unity. Take a moment to imagine the day that we understand this and can live in peace. What would that be like? What would it be like to love unconditionally with your heart and all your might all the time? This is what you would be like. You would carry the oneness of love in your heart. You would teach the oneness of love to your children. You would speak of the oneness of love when you are at home, in your car, at the grocery store, when you are protesting, and when you despair because the protests did not work. You are going to forget all this because life is hard. To snap yourself out of this divine hypnosis, why not wear a piece of jewelry or a special hat? Or put these words on your doorway? Seriously, this is only the most important thing that you can ever know. And even if you do all of the things, the jewelry and the hat and the doorway, you will still forget. You are designed to forget and then to remember. But guess what? We are lucky. God is still one, and God is still love. Amen. Friends, now will you join us in singing Pray for the Wilderness?